Hello, welcome to another Telecreations video. In this video we're going to be talking about what I think might be the perfect isolation film, and I say this on the day before Victoria goes back into 6 weeks of isolation. Thank you, COVID. Loving it. I found kind of the perfect film to watch in these trying times, something that could probably at least mentally help me for the next couple of weeks, but also kind of is probably a nightmarish, vision of what could be happening. So let's dig into The Night Eats the World, which has a French name, but luckily it's not on the cover. I'd literally just finished watching this film. It's a 90-minute French zombie horror film. I note the fact that it's French because it is set in Paris, and that's the only French thing about it. The characters all speak English. Whatever characters that there are. So I'm going to first detail my review of the film, because I want to review the film whilst also going into some spoilers, so if you haven't watched the film, it's probably worthwhile watching it. If not, I hope this video can convince you, but I'm also using this as a study of the isolation film. So let me just jump into my 4-star review of the film. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Just reading it from my letterbox. So it's a 2018 film directed by Dominique Rocher. I always have a quote for the films, so my quote is, "Now you and I are the same, we're alone." And this is my review. So this is a poignant tale about a man isolated in an apartment building in Paris during the zombie apocalypse. The film is slow, sometimes tense, yet focuses itself as a character study of the effects of isolation in a deadly world. Cough, cough. This is a film that, though made in Paris, is spoken in English, so that the potential "it's in a foreign language" argument is, not relative at all, not to mention the overall lack of dialogue in the film as it is. The film is mostly portrayed through images and motion of the lead, outside of a few dialogue spots, with a few interesting musical intervals that give our character something creative to do in his isolation. And by that I don't mean it becomes a musical. This isn't that other zombie film where they have Christmas. What the fuck was that zombie movie? Jesus, I've already forgotten. Oh, there we go. This isn't Anna and the Apocalypse. So it's not like it's like Swiss Army Man. They just create music. The guy just creates music because he can, because it's pretty obvious that the character himself is actually a musician, whether that's his profession or his hobby. For 90 minutes, the film does all that it needs to, whilst keeping the viewer entertained and absorbed into another person's loneliness. No, it's not your classical run-of-the-mill zombie film, where many people die and it's a constant zombies appear from nowhere and a chase ensues. This isn't something like, what's the best comparison I'd say would be either Train to Busan or 28 Days Later. 28 Days Later, because it's in a big city, becomes isolated, zombies everywhere, but, there's only a few people, The film obviously has some inspiration, this film obviously has some inspiration from that, especially taking a few notes of the, zombie apocalypse in a major city, the lonely isolation of one person, at least for the start of it. Literally, he wakes up into a zombie apocalypse and has no idea, but just it's pretty obvious when he opens the door that, oh shit, there's blood everywhere, what the fuck happened? This isn't like Shaun of the Dead where, Shaun, halfway throughout the film, when the zombie apocalypse happens, he's just walking around, does his regular shit, doesn't realize the blood and the zombies and all the carnage. Which, of course, is used for comedy. And because his character is kind of very oblivious to that kind of shit, which is also used for comedy. And it's kind of like Train to Busan as well, because unlike because Train to Busan has this feature of, they're in a train for the majority of the film, and this guy hardly goes out of the apartment. It's 90 minutes spent purely in this apartment. There's only a 2 or 3 minute segment where he's outside of the apartment, and that's where he's trying to catch a cat so he can have a pet because he's lonely. And it doesn't go down well, which is kind of predictable, but at the same time, it's one of the only scenes where something like that is going to happen, so you kind of what are you doing, you idiot? Don't go outside, don't do this, it's a fucking cat, who cares? But yeah. So this is something unique and quiet in comparison to, of course, a lot of those films, but it's also something that is open to a folly of readings, from the metaphor of a relationship to the analysis of one's psychology in trying times. Wholeheartedly worth checking out. There's two things I want to note about the film, which I find quite interesting. Outside of the fact that, well, there's a few things. The main character, the actual actor, is a doctor and at least a medical practitioner, whatever, and what does it actually say in his bio? It does actually say what he is. I should probably actually look at that before I start bullshitting, which I'm not. Oh, he's a medical doctor. He's a Norwegian actor, a musician, and medical doctor, who can speak fluent English, which is very good. And he just, in the film, just casually sometimes just starts playing the drums or starts making music out of random objects. Then he treats himself after getting scratched by a zombie, and also treats someone else who he shoots. This is one only spoiler thing I probably want to mention outside of probably the rest of it. So that's kind of my review for the film. Good film, wholeheartedly worth checking out. In terms of spoiler territory, there is a part where a character named Sarah comes into the film. And of course, you've had a dream sequence a bit earlier where our main character wakes up in his bedroom and he hears noises and things running through the hallway, and then he tries to load his gun, it doesn't work, and the zombies break in and eat him alive. He wakes up, of course, it's all a dream. Same thing happens, half an hour later, but he gets his gun and he shoots through the door, and he looks through the hole in the door, and there's a girl that he's just shot. And so he brings her into his room, he drags her in, and he starts, taking the bullets out of her with his medical kit. Then, a few minutes later, you're thinking, shit, is this girl dead? And she's just there eating breakfast, they chat casually, they have some talks and discussions and whatever. They talk about the zombie in his elevator, and then they talk about escape. And they have this discussion about pretty much this idea of how you would get out of here, because she even said that, she's been using the rooftops. But as it is, you as an audience are probably aware earlier on in the film when he's walking around the whole outside, you get this God's eye view showing that that seems pretty impossible that she got in through the roof, but at the same time it's actually meant to be more than unbelievable enough given that she is actually there. But she obviously got in somehow without causing a ruckus with all the zombies. Or at least she realized that the ground was fucked when she got inside from the ground. Nevertheless, she got inside the building, he shoots her, and they're up on the rooftop, and she's saying, we gotta get, over to that roof, and he's like, oh, I'll never be able to make that jump, and whatever, and she's like, well, you can't stay here for eternity, you'll die, whether those zombies break in through the main door at the bottom of the building, or he runs out of food. And so he has an argument with her, he yells at her, and she storms off, and then he goes down to the room that she's locked herself in, and he, apologizes. He says, it's right, yeah, we gotta go from roof to roof, we gotta get out of here. And then they have a flashback to him performing surgery on her, and making sure that she was conscious and stuff, when she'd fallen unconscious. Of course, she never actually became conscious again. And then it cuts to him going into the room, and she's dead. She's dead on the bed in her original position with her, shirt up and everything, to show her belly full of bullet holes, and her face seems a bit puffed up. And that's when I realized, oh, she's been dead the whole time. This whole thing was actually in his imagination, that she was actually alive. Because that's how bad his psychosis has gotten, that he's like, oh shit, he realizes, okay, yeah, I gotta get out of here, because obviously the one person who I've come across, who I've killed by accident, turns out I didn't even save them, they actually just died, and now I can't do anything about it. But of course, the whole imagined version of her tells him, you have to get out of here, and he realizes, yeah, I gotta get out of here. And that, of course, leads him to the final thing of, yeah, let's get the fuck out of here. But I did actually read a review on IMDb about, it was an interpretive review talking about how the whole thing is a discussion about a relationship, because, everything that that a writer-director puts into a film isn't usually there on purpose. The film doesn't start with the guy waking up in an apartment in France. It starts with him going to a party where his ex-girlfriend is at, because he wants his records, his tapes. They're all cassette. He has a box full of cassette tapes, and he stays there for a long time at the party, waiting for his girlfriend to get this box, and she never does. So he goes after her, and then he starts arguing with her, and she's like, "All right, it's in the back room. I'll show you." And then he fights with her new boyfriend, but she breaks it up, and he goes to the back room. You hear some banging on one of the door. You think it's probably just two people having sex. It might in fact be a zombie that has woken up to some degree, but it's not overly explicit, it's not overly obvious, it just seems to be two people having sex against the door. And he goes into a room and he starts looking around for things and finds his box of cassettes. The door opens, no one's there, but he sees a girl in the hallway. He closes the door and locks it, and then he falls asleep after getting a blood nose, and that's when he wakes up afterwards and everyone's gone and dead. Oddly, no bodies. There's no corpses in the place. There's just a lot of blood everywhere, which I think is kind of a convenience for the film, because they don't have the only corpses and bodies are all the zombies that are outside on the street, outside of the few zombies that are in the actual building. Not to mention how he's in that apartment, and it's kind of weird how they structured it, because he opens the main door and there's two zombies out there, one of them being the person who his ex-girlfriend, who's now dead. And then he closes the door because he realizes that they're undead. Half her face is gone. And he closes the door, and then he ends up going for a different door, which he opens in a different way, because one door opens, you push it close, the other door opens the other way, and he kind of goes upstairs, so I don't really know if that means that he's gone into a different part of the building, there's a back door entrance as well. He's too afraid to confront the corpse of his girlfriend, who never shows up for the rest of the film, so that kind of confused me. Again, after all that stuff with the, him closing the door on his girlfriend, pretty much what this guy was saying is that the whole film is kind of a metaphor for getting over a relationship, because obviously you can tell that the main character doesn't want to let this girl go, and that's why, he's definitely going back there and whatever. He's very aggressive against the new boyfriend. But then the whole feeling of the film, which goes for quite a long time, the film actually goes for several months, because it goes from summer to autumn to winter. And it's kind of this whole discussion of him realizing a loneliness that he doesn't want to have. So, that's why he's still in the building, more or less. The building more or less becomes the outlet of the relationship. It's consistently the same, more or less, but it changes over time. It gets lesser and lesser, and it gets more quiet and scarier into some aspects. And he doesn't want to leave it, so he doesn't want to leave the relationship alone, even though it's already over. Much like how the world is dead, yet he still remains alive. And of course, when Sarah arrives, it's kind of not just this opportunity of escape, but it's also, there's other people out there, there's a big dating pool you could go into. So this whole kind of ideology of the film is subtextually about getting over a relationship and moving on, and the end-all be-all of his character arc of moving on is he gets to the next building, and then he looks across at all the different rooftops, pretty much meaning that you could either see it as what the obvious on-screen context is. There are all these other houses for him to explore, for him to live in, for him to reside in. But there's a subtextual analysis of, it's pretty much saying there's plenty more fish in the sea, All of these other places is new life, new love. However, the relationships they're obviously all, because they're all the same rooftops, there obviously is going to be the formula, there's going to be problems in a relationship kind of deal, but then the rest of it is fine. The rest of it is, you could be happy, you could be sad, whatever it be. And that's a nice interpretation of the movie, having that whole relationship thing be a thing. But in terms of the isolation aspect, which is what I like to see as the film as a good case study for the perfect isolation film, outside of the analysis of a breakup film, more or less. Even though arguably Midsummer's more on the nose with it, to be honest. This one's much more subtextual. So if you want a better breakup film, that's horror. Midsummer. But in terms of an isolation film, The Night Eats the World is interesting because it shows, especially once the electricity is out, there is no, outside of that film, has no communication with the outside world because of the obvious, human society has crashed. Us here in present tense, we still have our phones, we still have our social media and all that jazz in which we can contact our loved ones if need be. And so, as much as that's a fun spiel, he can't do that in this film, and the only interaction he gets is like 2 voice messages left by friends slash family. It's never explicitly told to you as to who they are, but obviously they are people who he knows. One of them saying how shit's getting hairy, he needs to get back home or whatever, where he'll be safe, or and then there was another one where it was someone saying goodbye to him because they know the zombies trying to break in and whatever. Maybe it was a family member or a friend, but he does say later in the film, talking to the zombie in the elevator, about his parents and how his mum probably wouldn't have survived this. She isn't the type of person to step over people and whatever, and so she probably would have died quite quickly. Whereas his dad, he doesn't really know. His dad could have been someone who survived for a long period of time, so obviously you kind of get that they're pretty similar in terms of characteristics. But in terms of itself as an isolation film, for the factor of, not just relying on whatever foods you can find and, scrapping through that element, not scrapping through that element, but like how he goes through all the different houses and whatever to find food. But also like the whole interactivity between people, like there's none, if any at all. It goes from, hey, last night I was at a party, tonight the only people that I can potentially contact might kill me, because they're going to potentially either eat me or bite me or just kill me, but either way spread some kind of disease. So again, you can see a potential reflection for COVID. And to be completely fair, there have been many films that I've watched in this past 6-month period, especially with this pandemic going on, that you can see a lot of reflection to the pandemic. And this isn't just zombie films, this could be anything. There are a lot of films that I've seen this year where, unfortunately, none of them come to mind as good examples. But there are plenty of films that I've seen this year where you can watch it and be, interpret it from a COVID point of view, and how it's the effect in the film and how everything in the film is so reflective of what's happening right now, just through either loose things or very blatantly obvious things, even though none of these films were made during a pandemic. In fact, a lot of them were made a hell of a long time beforehand. And so it's interesting to watch this film, especially seeing how people talk about the whole zombie aspect and being like, oh, I was expecting to be like a lot of people running around Paris getting killed by zombies or whatever. They were probably expecting 28 Days Later, So a lot of the poorer reviews were probably expecting 28 Days Later and not the film that they got. But if they rewatched it in today's present context of the pandemic, then yeah, they'd probably reappreciate it for that element. Not to mention how, if I had have watched it when it came out in 2018, I think it's possible that I may not have liked it as much, but I think I still probably would have liked it a lot because it is still really well paced. It's a really well done film, both as a character study and as a horror film. And of course, horror films don't always have to be jump scares and violence all the time and whatever. They can be used as character studies. Even like The Shining, especially, that's a character study, with the effects of cabin fever and stuff like that. And so it's interesting to see something like that in a zombie film. And again, I mean, you could even say, The Shining, you could inflict this whole subtextual analysis or interpretation based on the whole pandemic deal, the whole let's restrict ourselves from everyone for a long period of time and then we all quietly go insane. And that's pretty much what this film is saying. It's like saying that even in a scary world where disease and death is just around the corner, you can still quietly go insane. And I think it allows us to reapproach the luxuries that we as a society have, outside of the fact that we're not dealing with a zombie apocalypse. It's a pandemic, not a zombie apocalypse, but we have the ability to contact people on our phones. And that's what's probably a good thing about watching a film like The Night... What was it? The Night Eats the World? Yeah. And of course, I like even the title because, like, the night is usually allocated as the loneliest, quietest time of being. Usually, also the scariest because it's dark and you can't see what's going on. And that's kind of like it's metaphoric and symbolic and whatever for how the world has gone quiet and dark and scary and deadly. And it's kind of like what we're having now, except we've got so much traffic on the internet, especially with Twitter and probably Reddit and whatever other forums and sites with social media that are blowing up with people talking about pandemic this, pandemic that. But then if you isolate it to just what the best thing you can get out of this is the simple aspect of you can go onto this and text your mate saying, hey, are you still alive? How are you? FaceTime them, Skype them, whatever the crap it is. You have that ability with your tiny little mechanical devices that you have the internet attached to, and also the power that to charge it, which of course this guy loses within like the first few months. He loses all electricity. And so it's nice to be able to just look at something that is the worst of the worst, because of course everyone's going to be complaining about, getting locked down and shut in and whatever. And look, I'm about to tackle another 6 whole weeks of lockdown, which we've been lucky enough in Australia as it is. We're not like it is in America or a lot of other countries where it's really shitty. And we have been lucky, but unfortunately we've had a recent spike. This is of course July right now. And so to be able to watch this kind of a film and to just kind of, it's not a pessimistic ending as well, which I kind of like. I think that works for it too. It's not like, oh, we're going to watch this character go through all this and in the end he dies. Nope, it's left on an open, optimistic enough note. Like, of course, it's still a zombie apocalypse, pandemic, whatever the fuck. But there's hope. And for right now, that really helps because obviously I can't see my friends anymore. I mean, I was only hanging out with my best friend anyway, and I can't see my girlfriend anymore, who I haven't seen in 3 weeks anyway. So I won't be able to see her for another 6 weeks. So I probably won't be able to see her for what? That's 9, possibly 10 weeks in total, assuming we're even allowed out after the 6 weeks. And then I don't even know when I can see her in that time because I don't know what day they might open everything up again. It could be a Monday, it could be a Wednesday. If it's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday kind of deal, then yeah, that's like the best kind of time where I can see my girlfriend. But unfortunately, outside of that, that's not how it's going to be. Even when Australia first opened up again after 2-3 months of complete, lockdown outside of going to work and buying food and whatever, which I was still doing. I was still going out and buying, working and whatever. I still am now, even during this time period. I'm even doing an internship as well, so it's like there's I've got two things to deal with, and then I've got the mental strain of I can't see my best friend, I can't see my girlfriend, and it sucks. And I mean, the first person I saw once lockdown was done the first time around was my best friend, and it was great. It was wonderful. A person. You don't really sometimes, because my best friend is she's not someone I will text all the time. We'll maybe send each other a daily Snapchat or whatever the fuck, but we don't always text each other. But we started to, and we started to send each other memes and whatever the fuck, whatever got us through the days. Me and my girlfriend, we talk every day, so it's not really a problem. I don't FaceTime my best friend, we just text every now and again, but we're the kind of people who we prefer to see each other in person. So once we finally were able to, we realized how much we missed each other. And it sucked how much we'd missed each other. And we were lucky, and we have been lucky to have had these past 2-3 months to be able to see each other again, And it sucks that I can't see my girlfriend or my best friend for the next 6 weeks. But this film I think has helped me. And I do have the ability to watch a lot of films in that time. Again, whoop-de-fucking do. It's 6 weeks where I can watch movies and do whatever the fuck I want to because it's isolation. But I'm still going to work for 2 different jobs. Plus, I'm also doing uni, which is what the internship is for. So I've got myself a bit more busier than last time, and it's a lot shorter of a period at present. But yeah, but outside of that, that's how Isolation is. And honestly, yeah, I'd still recommend The Night Eats the World. It's good. It's good as a zombie film. It's good as an isolation drama. It's just good because, of course, after 2020, there's going to be probably a lot of films that are going to relate to this pandemic. And the whole isolation factor or the fear factor, you're gonna either get remakes of Contagion or it's gonna be a War of the Worlds. Is it the terrorist situation? And so it's gonna become cheap and crappy and boring and depressing real fucking quick. So before that shit starts really happening and snowballing like crazy, I definitely recommend watching this film because it doesn't have this current context. It in fact just is its own thing where you can apply your current context to it, which is nice. Which is also one of the great things about film, that you can just reinterpret it according to whatever context. And that's today's video. Thanks for watching. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe for more. This is Telecreations. If you've enjoyed it, then check out other playlists that we've got here, or videos that it says are recommended, or subscribe somewhere near my face. Oh, I'm kind of tired. But that's, yeah. Movies are fun. Movies are good. Adios, my dudes. That didn't rhyme, but I don't care. I'm not a poet.